No, man, but you got to keep going. What am I going to do, quit? That's not an option. You got to keep on keeping on. Life's a garden, dig it. You make it work for you. You never give up, man. That's my philosophy.
Hey, gardeners. Hope everything's growing all right for you this week. We are indoors right now doing some planning for next season. I'm going through some of my old seed to see what we can use for this next year, as well as looking at some of the seed I've gotten in the last few weeks, some things I got from the Heirloom Exposition, and thank you to Adam, one of our regular viewers and moderator here. He's gave me a bunch of his extra botanical interest seeds from the seeds he sells, man. I've got a lot of great options there for the garden. So right now, though, I'm really working on peppers. We're looking at our old pepper maps from last year to see what we grew. And I'm digging into some of those new catalogs I mentioned last week to kind of check out their pepper sections to see some things that we might want to grow, like this Ozark Giant right here. I love growing a majority of my peppers as sweet peppers. And yeah, so we're just kind of going through these here, checking out different ones. I know I need to get some more of this Lesia pepper, which is literally my new favorite pepper over the last couple of seasons. As Baker Creek says here too, it's believed to be one of the sweetest of all peppers, and I could definitely attest to that. It's delicious. So we got to get more of that seed there and get that going. It's about time to start thinking about starting our peppers up here as the new year is approaching, plus all of our other things as well too. So we've got a lot going on. So all right, everybody, let's get growing. All right, everybody. It's Saturday, so that means it's time for the Let's Get Growing show right here on the Urban Gardener channel. I'm Enoch. I'm your host today, and we've got a really great show for you, so y'all want to stay tuned. We've got some really, really awesome guests today. We've got returning to the show actually here in just a little bit later on, our good friend Tony O'Neill from Simplify Gardening. Tony's joining back with us again. Hopefully you'll be able to stick around. I was just talking to him just a minute ago too. They're having a pretty big storm over there in the UK. So well, hopefully he'll be able to stay on for this conversation without losing his power. So awesome. We'll be talking to him here just a little bit later on the show. And here also in just a few minutes too, we are following Michael Overstreet, the garden nerd. We're going to have him on the show here in just a few minutes too. So like I said, you want to stay tuned to check out all these really great garden guests that we've got here on the show. And also, if you're here joining with us right now, remember right at the top of the show, let's click that like button, hit the thumbs up for sure. Also, subscribe to the channel if you haven't subscribed already. Hit that bell notification so you can be notified of upcoming videos and live streams, and definitely be sure to share with all of your friends out there and let them know about our great show that we have here every Saturday and Sunday at 11 a.m. Pacific Standard Time, 2 p.m. Eastern. And I do have to say that with kind of a caveat at this moment right now too. I say every Saturday and Sunday, but we are approaching the end of the season, the end of the year. And so we've got our shows this weekend, and then we've got our shows next weekend. And then after the next weekend, we're going to take a couple of weeks off. So it won't be every Saturday and Sunday exactly, because we are going to have some holiday time off, but we will be right back at it again right after the first of the year. We're lining up some more really great guests for the 2025 growing season. I can't believe it's the end of the year already, man. It's just really hard to believe. This year, I mean, most years, especially at my age now, seem like they're just flying by and everything, but this year really felt like it flew right by. So again, too, probably because we're just having so much fun here throughout the year. We've had a really great year of the show here. So, and also too, real quick here, while we're at it, top of the show, let's make sure we give a big, huge shout out to all of you who are joining with us on the replay right now. Thank you so much for jumping in and checking out our show today. And And it's always great to have all of you here live, but I know not all of you can make it live, so it's also wonderful to see all of you on our replay. So if you are joining with us and checking out the show on the replay, definitely be sure to get down into the comment section there and leave us some comments. Let me know what you got growing on, what you're planning for next year in 2025, or just stop by and say hi. I love it when you guys leave some comments there. And definitely, and if you are here joining with us live, definitely be sure to get into the chat there. I already see we've got a bunch of great people already starting the conversation over there right now too. So definitely jump into the chat there, ask some questions, leave some comments. But if you do have any questions, try to put them in big, bold capitals so that I can see the questions from the regular conversation. That's just a little helpful thing we can do to make sure we're getting your questions in, and definitely put in those questions. I love hearing and seeing the questions from you all, especially when we got our guests coming up here in just a little bit. Also, again, too, right down in the description, we've got links for everything Urban Gardener, Let's Get Growing show, all that sort of stuff, plus links to our guests and our guests today. And I love it when you guys support all of our guests as well too. So go check out those links after the show and go check out what they've got growing on their channels. And one of the extra thing you could really do as a big favor for me is go down to their comment section of one of their videos or posts or something and let them know that you saw them here on the Let's Get Growing show. That'd be really great, because that's what we're all about here, man, is the gardening community and supporting the garden community. We're so fortunate to be able to talk with so many people who are growing within the the social media and content creation in the garden community. We've got awesome guests each and every week, so it's really awesome when you guys help support them as well too. So right on. Hope you all been catching up with our shows. Last Saturday, we finally got on the show one of my favorite gardeners here in the Pacific Northwest, Masilla Della Lana from Learn to Grow, was on with us. Masilla is actually one of the first people I interviewed like this kind of online throughout the channel for an old contest I was on years ago. So we've been working over the last, it's taken a while, but we finally got Masilla on. So you want to go back definitely last Saturday and check out that show and check out that conversation. She's such a wonderful gardener. She's been doing this a long time, and so she's definitely someone, especially for those of you who do grow up in the Pacific Northwest like me, you'll definitely want to be following her, what she's got going on. Plus, she's doing a lot of stuff with mushrooms now. Mushrooms are kind of a real big new thing. So she's got a whole new channel talking about growing and doing mushrooms and everything. So you want to check that out as well. Last week, we were following Rebecca from Happy Heart Gardens. Rebecca actually was on with us earlier this year, so we had her back on the show. Really fun conversation with her. So again, too, you want to go and check out that show for sure from last Saturday. And then again, too, it's Saturday, and like I mentioned just a little bit ago, we are on every Saturday and Sunday. So we do have a Sunday edition of the Let's Get Growing show. And if you didn't check out last Sunday edition of the Let's Get Growing show, you'll want to go back and check out. We had a gardening roundtable. We've been doing a lot of these garden roundtables on our Sunday edition this year, and they've just been so awesome. It's a great way for us to be able to bring back guests that we've had on before, and then bring them back on for a nice, long, fun conversation between gardeners. And last week we had Katrina from Sow and Tear and Ryan from Heavenly Hills Homestead on with us. It was a really great conversation. Again, like I said, you'll want to go back and check out those shows from last weekend for sure. And then I do want to I usually wait till the end of the show to kind of forward promote some of our stuff, but I do kind of want to mention, as I said, like we are going to be taking a break after next week's show. Or actually, you know what, before I mention that, let's mention tomorrow, Sunday, we have coming back to the show our good friend Scott Wilson from the Gardener Scott channel to do Your Garden Questions Answered. Yeah, Scott has been joining with us the second Sunday of every month this year, and we've been having a really awesome conversation with him, and we get to answer all these just really, I don't ever really, consider myself a garden expert. I love having the experts on the show and talk about stuff. That's when it's great to ask questions questions and all of that, but good general gardening questions and all of that that you might have, some things that you might want to be thinking about coming up into this next growing season, some questions you have from what you experienced this last year. If you got any of those, think of some of those, definitely come and join with us tomorrow to get those questions answered from Gardener Scott. He's a master gardener, and he's definitely my go-to guy when I need to get something figured out in the garden for sure. And then, like I said, next Saturday show, we are going to do kind of a end of the year type of special edition of our show. So next Saturday, we're just gonna kind of do a year-end review. We're gonna look back on this year. It's been such a wonderful year and everything. We'll have on the show with us our sponsor, Charles Malky from Ivy Organics. We'll have Sarah from Sarah's Seed Shop with us. Maybe a couple of other people. I'm kind of working on putting that together still just a little bit, but that'll be kind of a fun show. And then, like I said, that's going to kind of be the last Saturday edition of the show anyways. And then for our Sunday edition of the show, it will be next week, our third Sunday of the month. And then every third Sunday of the month, we do our monthly gardening book club. And we're joined by our good friend, Mark Boucher-Colbert. And we're going to talk with Diane Meisler this month. That's our featured book this month, Grow Your Soil by Diane Meisler. This is such a great book. I've been reading on it here the last week or two and just love it. It's really, illustrative. It's got a lot of great things about it. So we'll definitely be talking about that this next Sunday, which will be our final show of 2024. Again, I can't believe it. It's end of the year already. I'm already, like you saw at the beginning of the show there, starting to plan on with all of my garden seeds, checking out the old seeds, looking at some of the new seeds, planning on buying and purchasing the seeds we need for this next season, especially like I was showing there, peppers. Peppers are only getting started here in just a couple of weeks here indoors. We get them started nice and early right here in indoors. We grow them out for a few months until it's ready for them to go out into the outdoor gardens. And so that's process starts here in just a couple of weeks. It's amazing. We got our 2025 growing season started just a couple of weeks back as we were getting all of our garlic put into the ground and everything as well too. So yeah, there's just lots and lots growing on here at the Urban Gardener, and hopefully we'll get to be able to share all of that with you here real soon as we get moving on into 2025. Right on. Again, we have such a great show here for you today. Thank you all so much for joining with us. I can see there's already a ton of people already here in the conversation. So I'm going to try to get through here just real quick here and see if we can't give a good shout out to a few people here. Right on. Let's see. First of all, we definitely got to give a big, huge shout out to Jay Dixon. She's in our chat right now, facilitating everything and keeping the conversation going. And also, biggest thing Jay does for us is put in all these awesome links into the conversation there. So that, if something comes up and we're talking about a book or another channel or any sort of thing like that, Jay is right on top of it and gets us links put into that chat box there too. So you want to keep an eye out for those as well too. And thank you, Jay, for joining with us here today. And I saw it nice, bright and early too. We got David from Bowtie Life in the Garden. He's already in there getting going. He says, good morning to all of you out there. So great to see all of you joining us nice and bright and early from Australia. We've got our good friend Rick joining with us. Thank you, Rick. Great to see you. Awesome. Oh, here we are. Got Rob's Allotment joining us from over in the UK right there. Good morning, day, evening to you all. Yeah, we're all throughout the spectrum of time right now, early morning to late night for all of you over there in the UK, especially our guest coming up here just a little bit later on the show too. Tony from Simplified Gardening in the chat there, I see. And then also, excellent, let's go, right on. Christopher Bransdahl. Check out Christopher's channel there too. He's starting to put out some new videos finally. I've been really excited about all of that and been enjoying that again too. Christopher's a really good friend of ours here on the Urban Gardener channel. We've been doing live streams with him for years now and all of that. Him and our good friend Kang Star join up with us every couple months for our garden roundtable and all that. I'm really can't wait for the next conversation we have to get into all the cool things that Christopher has growing on there. So definitely awesome. Again, like I said, to see all of you joining in the conversation here. Let's see here. We got Meyer Lemons. Right on. Love that name. Meyer Lemons. Excellent. Tony in the conversation. And then, as I was mentioning also at the beginning of the show, our moderator and good friend from right down the road in Central Point, Oregon, we got Adam Burley joining with us. Again, thanks for all those seeds. I've been going through them. They're just really awesome. So thanks again, Adam. Big Will Dog in the soil. Excellent. Good to see you, Will. We had Will on this show actually a couple of weeks back. You can go back and check that out. We had a great conversation with all of you a couple of weeks back. That was really fun. And let's see here. Again, too, there's so much going on right now in the conversation. Sorry if I miss anybody here. Dusty, great to see you. Awesome. Thank you for joining with us here. Right on. Let's see, we got to exploring nature together. Awesome. Excellent. Thank you for joining. Excellent. Thank you for joining with us today. Right on. Let's see, Mel, Veg and Flowers. We got Teats Treats. Thank you for jumping in with us. Man, we got a nice showing right now. Excellent. Thank you all so much. And again, too, here as Jay says as well, too, we do have opportunity for questions here all throughout the show. Definitely put them in all caps if you can there. Thank you. Let's see here. All right. Right on. Dealer 978, thanks for jumping in. We got Darth X back in the chat. Thanks for coming in today. Awesome. Let's see here again too. I hope I'm not missing anybody here, but again, thank you all so much for being here with us today. Hey, Jersey, great to see you too. All right. Oh, Sam. Yeah, like I said, so many awesome people, so many of you awesome people joining with us here today. So great. Thank you so much. All right, we got to get moving on. In fact, I want to make sure I'm not really missing anybody though, too. I think we've got most everybody so far. All right, I'll try to keep an eye on everything as well, too. So thank you all so much for being here today. Like I said, we've got a great show coming up for you all in actually here in just a minute or two. We'll get started with our very first guest, and I'll see you all in just one moment. Let's Get Growing is sponsored by IV Organic.
Hi, my name is Charles Malky, biologist and plant expert with IV Organics, where we grow cool plants and author Saving the World with the Home Garden. IV Organic 3-in-1 Plant Guard has 7 natural oils that protect your plants, not just from the summer heat as well as winter cold, but also protects your plants from damaging insects and rodents. The oils in the product include castor, cinnamon, clove, garlic, peppermint, rosemary, and spearmint. These oils are natural insect and rodent repellent oils, which are encapsulated by the base powder, offering your plants months of protection at a time. 1 application per year will suffice for protection against damaging summer sunburn and winter sun scald, but if the target is pests, application as much as 2 to 3 times a year may be necessary.
Hi everyone, this is Sarah from Sarah's Seed Shop, here with another trivia question. Which vegetable has the highest vitamin C content? A. Kale, B. Red bell pepper, C. Carrots, or D. Broccoli? We'll be back with the answer a little later in the show.
So, all right, all right, all right. Do you know the answer to Sarah's trivia question there? Definitely drop that into the chat as well, too, and we'll get the answer here in just a little bit later in the show. But yeah, I definitely want to mention, too, that you want to get over and check out Sarah's Seed Shop. And while, like I said, we're talking about seeds, I'm getting into ordering seeds and all of that, too. Sarah's got a lot of great essential garden seeds there in her garden shop that she has at sarahseedshop.com. And again, too, you won't find a better price, a better deal on seeds anywhere. I don't care what anybody's claiming out there. Sarah's got the best deal on essential seeds. You'll want to go and check out her shop and go and get some of those too. And then shop around for all those great other varieties and things from your favorite seed sellers and stuff. But if you got some of those essentials that you need to grow in the garden, definitely go to sarahseedshop.com and get some of those seeds too. So excellent. Right on, everybody. Let's get moving along today. Like I said, we're just kind of rolling along today. So let's get going with our first guest today for Are You Following Me?
Are you following me? Are you following me, dude?
All right. This week we are following the garden nerd, Michael Overstreet.
Hey, Enoch.
Hey, how are you doing? Great to see you today.
Good to see you. I used to watch that guy on YouTube, so I was smiling extra.
Oh,
big.
really? Yeah.
That's great.
I know. I love that one. That's really so funny. I couldn't resist it. How you been? How things going?
Hey, things are going good. Just rolling along. I feel you when you talk about the years just fly by, man. The older I get, the years fly by, and it's crazy.
Yeah. It's again too unbelievable, and and just kind of a little caveat to that too is that I just became a grandfather this year.
Oh, wow.
And it just seems like my granddaughter was just born yesterday, and now here she is almost going on 6 months old now already. So again, too, like I said, things just start flying by as we get older. It's
Yeah,
crazy.
that's crazy. Congrats on being a grandpa, by the way.
Yeah, it's really awesome. It's just my favorite thing this year.
Awesome.
Yeah. All right. So here, I'll give you just a minute or two to kind of introduce yourself to everybody, let everybody know who you are, where you're at, and what you got growing on.
Sure. Yeah. So my name is Michael Overstreet. I am in Mesa, Arizona, born and raised. One of the few natives here in Arizona that's lived here. I'm 40 years old. So I'm here. I have a YouTube channel called The Garden Nerd. And I also just launched I call it luxury landscape and consulting business, where I go out and help people here in the local area with their yards. So I'm just here growing stuff in the hot desert of Arizona and loving life.
Oh man, Arizona. Yeah. So how did things grow down there? Pretty good.
Yeah. So, it's hot, of course. No one wants to be here in June, July. Plants don't want to be here either. But we actually have an extended growing season, right? You were talking about peppers and getting your seeds started. Well, I actually have peppers growing in my garden right now outside.
I know, yeah.
I never stop, right?
So they just don't go. Yeah, they're pretty much perennials for you then, right?
Exactly. And I have tomatoes growing right now in my yard, right? So things grow almost year round. It's almost like we have the deciduous slowdown season in the summer versus the winter.
Yeah. That is one of the kind of crazy things about the difference between growing so far north versus south, is that when you get south like that, again, you got those longer, hotter, more warmer winters in a sense, but we got the really hot summer. So instead of taking the break in the wintertime, you're taking the break in the summertime.
Exactly. Which is good, because I don't want to be out when it's 120 degrees either. So it's nice for me to take a break as well.
120s. Oh, I'm a heat lover. I live right here in Southern Oregon in the Rogue Valley. We do get some nice hot summers. I love the heat, but when it starts getting up over 100 like that for too long, oh my. And I had family that lived down in Yuma, Arizona.
Oh yeah.
And I went to visit them a few times, a couple of times during the summer, and that was a mistake on my part for sure.
It's bad. You know what? I have almost like a mini jungle here. So I would guess, honestly, my yard is probably 5, maybe even sometimes 10 degrees cooler in the midst of my yard, just because I have so much going on. So that's kind of what I love about growing here in Arizona is I've lived here my whole life. I hate the summers and the heat, but if I can cool it down a little bit and be out amongst my plants, it makes it that much better and bearable.
Yeah, that's really true. I've seen like these things where they've shown pictures of like streets, you know what I mean, without any plants or trees on it, and they show you like what the temperature would
Yes.
be, and then they put a bunch of trees and all that sort of stuff, and then show you what the temperature would be after
Yep.
that. And I'm like, it just makes so much sense. Why don't we do more of this?
I
Especially
know.
in hotter places, lots more trees and plants and things to help cool things down.
Yep, exactly. I actually have on my website, I tell people to email me, message me, whatever, tell me on social media, and I have a tree counter on my website because I'm trying to get, right now my goal is just to influence 10,000 people to plant 10,000 trees.
Right.
Because I'm the same way. It's like, man, I live here, and with time it's grown. There's more concrete, there's more asphalt, there's more homes, there's more of everything, and that heat island effect is just getting greater and greater every year. So I'm trying to do my little part and plant more trees.
That's right. I mean, because you got to kind of come back behind all of that development and kind of reestablish things, because all they're doing in developing is taking all of that down without really figuring out, as we're growing, to incorporate. Why don't we do this at the same time? So, folks like ourselves have to go behind everything and try to fix the situation when it comes down to it. But yeah. Right on. So tell us a little bit more about your history with gardening. Like, where did this start for you? Was gardening and growing something that's been a part of your life since you were young, or something you came to when you got a little bit older?
Yeah, so I don't know if interesting is the right word, but it's a little bit of a journey. So as a kid, my parents, both my mom and dad, they always loved keeping a nice yard, right? Not necessarily growing a lot of things and growing a garden, but just growing a nice yard. And so I grew up every Saturday. I didn't have a choice. I was out in the yard, right? Just working with plants, which sometimes I hated as a kid. Other times, I enjoyed, but that kind of got my start. But then what really got me into it, so I lived for 2 years in the Dominican Republic. So as tropical as you can get, right? So I was amongst the avocado trees, the mango trees, the plantains, the bananas, and I thought, wow, this is really cool. I didn't think you could grow any of that here in Arizona, right? So then when I got home, I saw somebody that I know on social media post about their mango tree here in Mesa, Arizona. I was like, what? You can grow a mango tree here? So I reached out to him, and he said, yeah, you can. And there's a couple nurseries where you can go buy a mango tree. So I thought, oh, that's cool. I went and got one tree, planted it. And I told my wife, hey, this is the one tree I'm going to buy for our yard. Little did I know, 7, 8, 9 years later, I would have planted hundreds of trees here in my yard. And so it just kind of grew as an obsession and almost like an addiction. I tell my wife, hey, if I'm going to have an addiction, this is the best addiction I could have, right?
Oh, tell me about it. That's for sure.
So it's just slowly grown over time. As I plant more trees, it's just something I can't stop. I just love being amongst trees and plants and vegetables and everything. So really it all kind of just spiraled out of control in a good way from that one single mango tree after I had lived for 2 years in the tropics.
Yeah. Are you familiar with Greg Peterson down there?
Yes. Yep.
Yeah, or the Urban Farm?
Yeah, he's doing great work. Lots of good educational work. And yeah.
We've had Greg on a few times here too. He's just really great. In fact, I gotta call him up and maybe get him back here soon too. But he's involved with a lot of that tree growing there in like the Phoenix area and everything as well too. And again too, for me, it's just kind of amazing. Like, you think of like Arizona, you think of the desert, and kind of like what you were talking about, you were kind of skeptical on some things and stuff, so for a lot of us who, maybe more north and everything, we'd be real skeptical of most things growing. But it's amazing, actually, the things that you can actually grow.
It is.
Once you get the conditions just right.
Right. Yeah, it's exactly what you said. And that's what I tell people a lot of times. You get the conditions right, you get the soil right. I'm a huge proponent of good soil. You get the right microclimate, right? Because you can't go and just plant a mango tree in the middle of your yard with hot granite rock all around like people like to do here in Arizona and have it survive, right? But if you build the right microclimate first, and then you build the soil first, and then you plant that mango tree, you're going to have success. So it's all about, right? I did the Master Gardeners course here in Maricopa County in Arizona, and their mantra, I don't know if this is the mantra everywhere with the Master Gardeners class, but it's right tree, right place.
Yeah.
Which I thought was great.
Yeah, for sure. Definitely. Excellent. Let's see here. I did get a question jump in here. Rick from over in Australia is asking if you've been visiting. Have you visited the Arizona Worm Farm?
Yes, sir. I was just there yesterday.
You were there yesterday.
That is
Awesome.
my favorite place to go. I go there often. It's as I drove in yesterday, like I go once a month. And as I drove in, I thought, wow, they've changed so much. Like every month I go, they do
Yeah.
more and more stuff. And I just thought to myself, this is honestly the coolest place in the world. It's so cool what they're doing.
Oh, wow. Yeah, I got to get down there and check them out for sure.
Yeah.
I've heard a lot about it. I've gotten, I've just gotten this last year, starting actually about a year ago, I started my first worm bin and started
Alright.
collecting
Yeah.
and growing my own worms to get my own worm castings. I've been buying worm castings for
Yep.
years from other people and all of that. And now after this year, I'm like, why did I get this started earlier? Why didn't I start doing this earlier? Because growing worms and basically farming your own worm castings is such an amazing thing you can do in your garden space. And it's really, in fact, it's really actually saved me a lot of money, to tell you the truth, whether it's buying the worm castings or just the regular feeding I do of my garden throughout the season. I'm just using a lot of those worm castings to make like worm teas.
Yeah.
Yeah. And just spraying it all over the place and everything. And man, the plants loved it this year. Everything was really great. And yeah, so that was really a big addition for me. So I'll have to check out that Arizona worm
Yeah,
farm for
that's
sure.
really cool. And like I said, I'm a huge proponent of the soil. So that's why I go to Arizona Worm Farm. You can't get anything better than their compost, their worm castings, everything they sell. And people ask me, why do your vegetables look so good? Why do your fruit trees look so good? It's not that I'm doing anything special. It's that I start with the right soil, right? With the right inputs, with the right fertilizers, with the right compost. You do that, gardening isn't that hard. So
It
you
isn't.
start with the right soil, you're going to have success.
And I think that's the biggest thing. And one of the things I try to tell people is I'm kind of, showing or talking to new gardeners and all of that is that it's hard to do when you're a new gardener is to kind of simplify things. It's great. We got Tony on here, simplify gardening, all of that. But when we think about gardening and we're new to gardening, there's just so much.
Yep.
There's just so much and we don't know what direction, what we should be taking and doing and all of that. But then after you get some experience, after a while, you start to find and learn, like, why was I so concerned over here with this, or why was I doing this over here and all that, when things are actually a lot more simpler when it comes to just taking care of a good natural organic garden.
Exactly. And I always, when I talk to people and they ask me for, advice or whatever, I boil it down to three things. The first one is right plant, right place, right? You got to build the right microclimate, put it in the right place. And then the second is, like we've talked about, you got to get the right soil. Don't go cheap. Don't go to Home Depot and buy whatever bag you find of Miracle Grow or whatever and use that, the right soil. And then 3, the right water. You got to make sure you're giving it the correct amount of water. You focus on those 3 things and master those 3 things. Again, gardening is not that hard. It becomes pretty simple.
Yeah. Right on. Let's see. I had another question here for you. Let's see. Do you use a lot of shade fabric? Any, you got a lot of sun. Is there places you get that kind of require some shade fabric?
Yeah. So initially, when I moved into this house, it was all just hot granite rock, no trees. It was just bare. So I removed all that granite rock over time and I started planting things. And yeah, initially I had to use a lot of shade cloth, right? Like all my small tropical trees and other things, I built a PVC structure and put shade cloth over it. And they lived in that through the year. But now, because I built my microclimate, like I like to talk about, and I have my large mulberry tree and my bamboo and my moringa tree and my Royal Poinciana, right? All these big trees that offer shade. Now I don't have to use any shade cloth because my yard and the plants are kind of taking care of it. So it's been a natural progression over time to where I don't have to use it anymore.
Yeah. Excellent. Yeah. There's places for me too. Like I said, we still get some really hot summers. We do a lot of stuff and there's still spots where I've, for certain things. And especially as I'm starting to reset up this next year. I used to do this really cool rooftop pepper garden in these 5-gallon wicking buckets that I did up on a rooftop and everything. And one of the things before we had to take it down years ago, but I get to bring it back up this next year. It's a whole nother story. But one of the things I had to do though, in the like last year or two I did that, was set up shade cloth up there.
Uh-huh.
Because again, too, it's one of those things we're thinking and we're reading and learning as a early new gardeners. You know, peppers love full sun, right? So you're thinking rooftop. Let's put them up on the rooftop. They're gonna have full sun all day long, and then boy, oh boy, you hit a heat stretch in the summertime, and those plants definitely let you know that that's not very fun for them.
Exactly.
Even though they're heat loving, you got to give them a break a little bit.
Everyone has a breaking point, even
yes, that's right, for sure. Right on, right on. So how'd our gardening season go for you this year?
It went good. I'm obsessed with mangoes. That's my favorite thing to grow by far.
Lucky you, yeah.
So right now, actually, in my yard, I have a couple dozen. So I just live in it's a pretty small house. I have 3 kids. So I have a couple dozen broccoli and cauliflower and pepper plants and tomatoes going. So I have a lot growing right now. I'm looking very forward to harvesting it here in the next few weeks. But this past summer, I went crazy with mangoes. So I mail ordered mangoes from Florida. I got a new shipment of a dozen mangoes every single week. And I ate every single one of those mangoes, and I took the seeds and I planted every single one of those seeds.
Oh, wow.
So I have tons of mango seedlings, very small trees. I've planted a couple dozen here in my own yard. I've given a lot away. I still have some in pots that I'm getting through the winter. But I kind of went crazy this past summer.
You still got room in your yard?
Yeah. So my wife says, hey, we need a little bit of a lawn area for the kids. And I just slowly keep encroaching on that area. It's getting smaller and smaller, you know.
I'm running a park down the street. Come on, what are we talking about?
Exactly. But I plant a lot of seedlings, and when they mature a little bit in 5 years, my yard's going to be crazy.
Wow. Wow. Do you get out into the front yard or anything as well too? Or
I do. I live in an HOA. They're not super picky, but they are a little bit picky. So I have to be a little bit careful. But yeah, I'm looking at my window right here, and I have 5 mango seedlings just right out my window. And so, I have another more mature one. So I probably have a dozen or so trees in my front yard as well. But no vegetables. My HOA wouldn't like that if I had garden boxes and vegetables out in the front yard. So that's
HOA issues for sure.
Yep.
Yeah. That's too bad. Yeah. Like Tony says, I hate to live in an HOA. Oh my gosh. Yeah,
my biggest goal right now in life is to get out of an HOA to where I have more land and I don't have to deal with that.
Oh my gosh. Yeah. And then what would you do with all them trees?
Well, that's a problem.
You thought about that part of the process?
Yeah, I tell my wife, if we ever try to sell this house, there's only a few select people that are going to want to buy it when they look at the yard. So I don't know if that helps my property values or hurts it, but oh well.
Right. Excellent. And let's see, what are one of your favorite things to grow besides mango or the mangoes?
Besides mangoes, so I would say probably. I'll give you 2 things. One is peaches.
Okay. My favorite. Love them.
It's just insane how fast they grow. They're fairly easy to grow as well. There's a few varieties that grow great here in Arizona and love the heat. And then they just give you, within 3 years, you're going to get a couple hundred peaches every year harvest. So peaches for sure. But then also broccoli. So I'm a very picky eater. I did not eat broccoli growing up. I didn't eat vegetables growing up at all. I didn't like it.
We're just like that for sure. And I talk a lot about that too, is how literally gardening changed my palate so much from when I was a kid, because I was the same way. Broccoli, peas. Oh my God, I could not do peas. There was just no way, in
but then you grow it in your own yard and you just take a bite out of it. I'm just doing yard work in my yard in the middle of summer, grab a tomato and just bite into it like an apple. And it's the best thing I've ever tasted.
Yeah. And then that really emphasizes that point that gets made out there all the time too, is that kids who grow up growing things and growing them themselves and all that sort of stuff are more likely to eat more of that sort of stuff. And for me, I just wasn't that. I didn't have that experience at all. So every time I saw that green thing showing up on my plate, it was the last thing, and maybe didn't even get touched sometimes or whatever.
Exactly.
But anymore nowadays, it's like the first thing I go for. So that's just, you know.
And one thing I am the garden nerd, so I love to nerd out on soil as well. One thing
Oh,
that's
yeah.
important to point out with the soil, if you go and buy broccoli from the store, and then
Mhm.
you go pick it out of your own garden where you've grown organically and you started with good soil and it has all those good nutrients, and you do a
Yeah.
taste test,
Yeah.
honestly, the taste is going to be night and day difference,
It's
right?
amazing.
From the store, it's going to taste horrible. From your own garden, it's going to taste great. And that's because it's full of all those nutrients that are in your soil that are then translating into your broccoli
Yeah.
or whatever else you're growing. So one, not only does it taste better, but two, it's feeding you in a lot better of a way than if you just go buy it from the grocery store.
Yeah, yeah, and that goes with most everything that you can grow versus the grocery store. A lot of, a big thing too is that you can actually grow it until it's ripe enough.
Yes.
Isn't that
Yes.
isn't that terrible? You go and buy something and it's just like just breaks my heart every time. I'm like,
Yeah.
especially with peaches, because I mean I get so many
Yeah.
peaches. I have a little container peach tree, so I get some for my own, but I love peaches so much. So I'm always trying to check different places to see who's got the good peach. This year was a horrible year for trying to buy peaches
Yeah.
because
Yep.
none of them were ripe, right? Or they were just horrible.
Yeah, it's bad. I tell people, hey, if you've only ever had a store-bought mango, you've never had a real mango.
Oh my gosh.
Getting it as soon as it's ripe, there's nothing better. It's so good.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. What's your least favorite thing to grow?
Um,
It's tough, huh, for a garden nerd, right?
it's tough, man. I'll
Because
try.
even the things I don't really care for or don't eat really myself, I still love to grow. Like, I
Yes.
don't like to eat eggplants. I really don't. I talk about this all the time too, is I don't like to eat eggplants, but they're one of my favorite plants in the garden just because how cool they are.
They look so
The
cool.
flowers are cool. The fruits are cool looking,
Yep. I love growing papaya. I don't love to eat it.
Okay, there you go.
So the papaya, it just looks so cool. It's almost like a pole, but it has those cool looking leaves coming out of it.
Yeah.
I would just let my papaya. I had a tree. It got hit with the frost a few years ago. But I would just let the papaya fruit fall down to the ground and rot and decompose and feed the soil. And there were so many like local gardening groups, people that were just like so upset with me because I was letting the papaya just fall and compost and I wasn't eating it, but I didn't care to eat it. I just love the cool tree.
Yeah. There's just some things like that. I have a few plants where people are like, why aren't you? I'm like, well, I'm just kind of growing that one. You know what I mean? I got so much stuff and I get so much food and all sorts of great stuff out of my garden with all the stuff I grow that there's just some things I just grow to grow,
Exactly.
and then sometimes, yeah, exactly. In fact, I had a neighbor years ago complain about some plants I had in the back that was more towards their place because I grow on these alleyways, and they were complaining about because of trying to get through the alley and all of that. So they were complaining about the city, and one of the things that they said to him was like, yeah, and he doesn't even eat them.
That's great.
And in fact, I don't specifically eat food from that part of the alleyway garden because of how close it is to someone else's space that they have. And I saw them doing some things I didn't care about and had a conversation with them about that. So again, too, that has become now kind of my experimental part of the garden.
Oh, yeah.
So
Yeah.
things I'm not going to eat, I just want to grow and see how they do in certain whatever, that's what I do with those there too.
Oh, that's cool.
Right on. So yeah, you got this garden channel, you're doing everything, garden nerd. What inspired you with all of your gardening and all of that to start up your own channel and to start sharing and doing that sort of stuff?
Yeah. So I would say you and I are probably similar in our reasons. I just love growing stuff.
Yeah.
And it honestly, so this is not my full-time job. Although soon I hope it will be, but I work a stressful job. I have kids. My wife owns her own business as well. So we're very busy. When I go into my yard, when I go into my garden, I feel so good. It's like an escape from everything, right? So my wife owns a performing arts studio. We do shows where we get hundreds of people in a show, and I'm usually the one managing it all. And by the end of running all day shows, I'm just like, I tell my wife, I say, hey, I can't talk to anybody else. I got to go home and be in my yard. And I just go in my yard and I have a chair. I just sit down in the middle of my yard in the tropical section. And it just brings my anxiety level down to zero.
Yeah.
Oh, go ahead.
No, yeah, I was just gonna say I've got a similar thing. I got a little bench I set up in the middle of my patio garden in the back that I have and everything. And sometimes, it's good to relieve stress by going out and tinkering with some things or doing this and that. But sometimes you just got to go and sit in it, right?
Yep. Just take it all in. Take it
Just
all in.
sit
So,
in it. Yeah.
so it does that for me. And so I just really want to inspire others so that they can have that same sense of peace and happiness and joy that really,
Mhm.
I think everybody wants it. They just don't know they want it. But once you get a little bit of taste of it, like I
Yeah.
did, and obviously like you have, it becomes
Mhm.
an addiction, and you want to share it with other people.
Yeah.
Not
Yeah.
to get cheesy or, tree huggerish, but I kind of am a tree hugger. I think if more people were in their
Me
yard,
too. Yeah.
okay, if more people were in their yards growing stuff, honestly, that would solve half of the world's problems just by people being in their yards and growing their own food.
Yeah, and in so many different aspects too. It's just one of the greatest things about learning about gardening is how it contributes to lots of different aspects of our lives. Again, too, we just mentioned the mental health aspect that you can get from just being relieved of stress and just enjoying a garden space. The physical aspect of what we're doing and getting out there and physically working in that. The health the more healthy food aspect of things where we get to eat more tastier and healthier food and everything.
Yep.
And then, again, too, we can also extend it a little bit further too by, extending our knowledge to other people like you've done with your channel and everything. And then sharing and creating community as well too, which is good for us as well.
Exactly. I'm not a super social person.
Mhm.
But I will talk to anybody about plants and growing all day long.
That's right. That's
The
right.
community's awesome, right? I love the community.
Exactly. Again, too, that's what we're all about here. Let's get growing. Like I say, it's all at the top of the screen all the time. Growing community through gardening. That's what we do here. And again, too, I just really appreciate you spending your time here and coming and join with us here on the show this Saturday. It's really awesome. Let us know a little bit quick here before I let you go and everything about any sort of maybe future projects and things you've got growing on right now on your channel that people might be interested in. And then again, too, I'll remind everybody we do have links right down in the description there too, so you can go check out the Garden Nerd, go over and subscribe to his channel over there. Like I said, go leave a message, a comment, or something to let him know you saw him here, the Let's Get Growing show. But what do you got growing on there?
Yeah, so this is like a high level project, and this is why I started my luxury landscape and consulting business, is to fund this. My plan is to buy at least 30 plus acres out here in the desert of Arizona and completely regenerate the land and eventually turn it into a self-sustaining mini oasis where I'm growing dates, pomegranates, everything, right? And I'm harvesting my own water. That's kind of like my long-term goal, but I need money to fund it. So that's why I started this business. But that's what I'm going to do. And I hope within the next year to 2 years, I have the land purchased. And then from there, it will just be a slow roll of, grading the land, planting the initial pioneer plants and growing it from there. But that's my long-term goal, getting out of this HOA and getting 30 plus acres in the desert.
Yeah. Man, I'll tell you what, there might be some people who might be interested in partnering up with you and getting involved financially too, to help make something like that happen, because that sounds like a really amazing project.
That'd be great. Yeah. There's a lot of permaculture, and I'm forgetting what's like the godfather of permaculture, Australian dude. Why am I?
Mollison? Was it Mollison? Bill Mollison? What?
Daniel Lawson. Is it Lawson? I think it might be him.
Oh, Lawton.
Yes.
Yep.
He highlighted somewhere here in Tucson, and then also just right down in Mexico, honestly, just a few hours from me, where they've actually done it. So I know it's possible. And I just want to show people that it's possible to be self-sustaining and to use the land and, in a permacultural way. You don't have to follow traditional agriculture. So that's why I want to do it, is to, one, everything we talked about, but two, just to show people. Jeff Lawton, that's it. Yes, thank you. That's why I want to do it, because I know it's possible, and I think it would just be really cool to show people that.
Yeah, that would be great. Well, awesome, Michael. Thank you so much for being here with us today. Just really great to talk with you. We're definitely going to have to get you back on the show, maybe for one of our Sunday roundtables or something, and talk more about those trees that you've got growing on, all sorts of stuff. But again, man, just really great to catch up with you. Thanks for being with us here today.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks for having me. Anytime you want to talk about plants, I'm in.
Excellent. Yes, indeed. We'll definitely get you back on for sure. So again, thank you all. Thank you so much for being here.
See ya.
Hey gardeners, thanks for tuning in to our show today. We'll be right back at it here in just a moment. I just wanted to take a second here to highlight our regular videos and features here on the Urban Gardener channel. Our weekly garden journals, and our incredible featured visits.
The answer to this week's trivia question is B. Red bell peppers have as much as 190 milligrams of vitamin C per cup. By comparison, the average orange has about 45 to 70 milligrams of vitamin C. Thanks for watching. Head over to Sarah's Seed Shop where you can find garden seeds at unbeatable prices. Enjoy the rest of the show and have a great day.
All right. Did you get the answer to Sarah's trivia question correct today? I did actually, and I actually just kind of guessed though too. I'd have to say that too there, but I should have known red bell peppers for sure. In fact, I was just showing some of those there at the beginning of the show too that we're going to plan on growing and everything. But yeah, lots and lots of vitamin C in those peppers that you grow. So definitely grow some more of your own great, delicious peppers and check out some seeds that you can get over at sarahseedshop.com. Like I said, you won't find a better deal on any seeds, so go check out our seed shop there. And then again, too, look forward to next Saturday on the show as we do our year in review of the show for our final Saturday show of the year. We'll have Sarah on live with us. We'll talk with her live and maybe do some garden trivia with her as well too, live on the show next week too. So definitely come back and check that out. All right, everybody, we're moving right along today. Thank you all so much. We got so many great people in the conversation today, man. Thank you all for being here today. Really, it's just really amazing. I love doing this, kind of as I was talking about with Michael. You know, this is all about garden community, bringing people together with all of these great, awesome garden creators out there who are doing such amazing things, but to also be able to share that with all of you out there with this show. And it's just wonderful to see all of you here. Thank you so much for all of your support. And yeah, right. Let's see who, well, I guess I've already told you, but let's move on to our featured guest today.
You never know when you might learn something, and that's what this is about for me. These are people that I admire. Please welcome my next guest.
All right. So today on the show, we got with us our good friend, Tony O'Neill.
Hey,
Simplify
folks.
Gardening. You're still with us. Awesome.
I'm
I've been keeping an
here.
eye. I've been waiting for you to like something to sweep you out of the world here and take you away or anything, but you're still here. Right on. So did you get a chance to check on any storm info while
It's quieting down at the moment, so it hasn't kicked off yet again. So we're just
you're expecting
hoping
another burst soon, right?
It's around about between 8 and 10 o'clock, they said. So hopefully it'll stay quiet. But it's been crazy the last couple, since yesterday, really, yesterday morning. And this red warning's still in place until tomorrow evening. So
yeah. Dang, that's quite a bit of, that's again, you're saying like 95-mile-an-hour winds or something like that. That's just unbelievable. I can't even imagine.
I'm seeing there's a river that runs past our village, and yesterday or last night, I should say, there was video of a van floating down this river. So it's mental what's going on.
Oh my gosh!
So somebody's lost their van, but there are people now who have been flooded out for the second time in as much as 2 weeks. We've had a storm after a storm, and they've only just cleared out all the debris from the last storm, and now we've got this one just coming again. So it's been really bad. Fortunately, I've been very lucky. There's been loads of damage at our allotment site, but my stuff has stayed standing so far. So I've been very lucky.
Yeah. Well, that's good. Hopefully that luck will continue through the rest of the storm there for sure.
Yeah, let's hope so, innit?
Let's hope so,
Hey,
for sure.
Just got to rebuild if it happens, haven't you? You know, there's no point crying over it. You have to just, you know, I mean, it's hard for those who have been flooded out their home and lost all their possessions and stuff. But you know, you can let it beat you, or you can go and rebuild and get on with your life. You know.
Yeah.
Don't get me wrong; it's going to affect you mentally, but it is what it is, isn't it? You know.
Yeah, definitely, for sure. And because sometimes we need a reset, maybe, you know, barring the fact of losing really important things that might be, but you know, there's a lot of unimportant really things other than ourselves and that sort of thing like that. And sometimes we need a reset. Sometimes, like, you know, our maybe our yard needs a maybe I need to put this over here versus that. And it's a good thing nature came in and kind of pushed me to do that, right?
Yeah, I have a different outlook on life, I suppose, to a lot of people, because I see it so much in my job, you know, and you know, I see people losing absolutely everything, including family members, and to me, you know, it's just a case of, you know, as long as you're all still alive, you know, that's the main thing. Everything else is just, you know, not really that important in the big scheme of things. You know, all right, yes, it's going to be upsetting and everything else, especially if you lose like personal possessions that are you know, really important to you. But as long as your family are okay, then, you know, you can rebuild all of that other stuff. It's just when your family, you know, is the issue then, like, you know.
Yeah, exactly. That sort of stuff. There's just those very limited things that are just really important to us that you know, we worry about the most, and then there's just so many other things outside of that that are replaceable, fixable, you know, can, you know, again, to just be redone, whatever, especially, you know, for a lot of us gardeners, and whatever happens to our yards and these sort of things, you know.
I saw Dave just put in, no, we're getting hammered. We are absolutely. We haven't seen it. We've had the first red warning in Wales in 46 years. So it's that serious. Like, you know, they never give a red warning. It's always yellow and amber alerts. But this is the first red one we've had in like, well, since I was 3. So, you know, it's crazy.
Yeah. I gotta let knowledge here. We got Teach Treats put in a super chat for us there. Awesome. Thank you so much for that. But it says, great show on Vikings last week, Tony. You set the bar very high for his first week. You were the first guest over on Nate's channel.
I was very appreciative of it as well. And, you know, and it's good because now, you know, he's got Gardner Scott going on and loads of other people, which is great. And, you know, Nate has got a fantastic channel as well. So, and it's good that he's now building those relationships and getting people on his channel as well. So it's brilliant.
Yeah. I've kind of had to help push him along a little bit too, you know, like, oh yeah, you know, help him figure out, like, I had him on last year on the show, and then he was actually our first guest of this year on our show, and then we had him back a few weeks ago to do one of our garden roundtables with Mark Valencia over at Self Sufficient Me, and he just had such a great time with that and getting a chance to do that sort of stuff, and then from there, you know, I was like, yeah, you got to get people on with you and as well too. And then he reached out to you and all of that as well. So I love it. I mean, I love seeing all this sort of stuff that people get to do and what we get to do here in the garden community and sharing with each other and having these conversations. And it's really awesome to see someone like Nate too. That's a great channel to start.
It helps your audience as well to find new sort of channels out there that they may not necessarily come across, you know. So it's always great to be doing these sort of things.
Yeah, it definitely is. And, you know, again, too, just kind of bringing the community together though, too, because there's a lot of us out there. That was one of the things that I, you know, how this show really kind of got started was just doing a couple of different collaborations in person with people. And I was like, man, there's gardeners all over. And then when I learned about the StreamYard program, I was like, oh, this is what we got to be doing as gardeners and garden creators, those of us who have channels or authors or podcasters or all of that, is to, you know, to come together and have these conversations to help, you know, continue to inspire people, you know, to get out and grow.
And I think as well, this day and age as well, more people are watching YouTube than they're watching normal sort of terrestrial TV. And so it's, having these sorts of shows is another format that people can just chill out, relax to. It's not like my videos are usually pretty like, here, point, all the way through. And it's nice to be able to come onto a live stream and have a conversation, show a little bit of my personality, I suppose, because people don't see that in the videos, whereas with a live, that comes across,
Yeah, because with our videos, we're really kind of editing it down. We're making sure things are just the way we want them and want to present them and everything. But these live streams allow us to just a free flow and talk and discuss things, and again, like you said, it gets to show a different side of people. And that's why I love this kind of interview idea too, with folks like yourself too, because, that's, kind of the main point is to get to know people who are creating all this great content.
Yeah, absolutely. I agree with you there.
Yeah. Let's see here. We got a question that came in here a minute ago. Let's see. Oh, Rick was asking, do they have an emergency services, or do the fire brigades do clearing roads, trees, and etc. and all that? How do they handle that there?
The local councils will do a lot of the road clearing, but if it's like the danger, of life or anything like that. So if trees were to come down on across vehicles, things like that, then the fire service will come out and deal with that. We'll deal with most of the floodings that are going on. So I'm not in work today, but my watch is actually on tonight. Otherwise I wouldn't have been here. So I would have been out in this tonight dealing with people's floodings and everything else. But fortunately, I'm actually off work at the moment. So, but my watch have had a hammering this week. They were 2 days, and they're now starting the first night shift, and they got tomorrow night as well. So they're really dealing with this storm.
Wow. Yeah. Well, I mean, I guess lucky for you a bit that you'd get to stay out of it a little bit there too. But
I'm in my warm room here talking to you fine people. So it beats being out there in all the water, I can tell you.
Yeah. All your buddies though, man. I mean, they're like, oh man, the toadies over there just nice.
They're having a hiding at the moment. It's this time of year, we're really busy with the floodings and stuff, especially on my station. We have so many rivers around there, and we're in a bit of a valley. So where I live is called the valleys because there are mountains everywhere, and the villages are always down right in the bottom of the valley. So all that water collects on the mountains, comes down, hits the rivers, and that's why they're overflowing. And the river flood defences aren't that great. 4 years ago, we had a really bad flooding down in Pontypridd, and it took out multiple streets. We're talking like the first floor gone, completely. And they've done nothing to the flood defences since. And now they were hit again 2 weeks ago with the last storm, and now they're being hit again now with this one, so it's a little bit crazy that the councils haven't done anything, and
I that always kind of troubles me a little bit though too, that sort of thing, because even here, and I'm sure it's probably everywhere, is that we know storms are coming eventually at some point in time, that we should be building for this stuff. We should be thinking and planning for some of these things. But it always seems like it takes some disaster to kind of show us. And then we start thinking back like, oh man, we should have been doing this, or we should have been doing that. And then we're always after the fact thinking about or worrying about or maybe even implementing certain things. And then,
Well, they've known now for the last 10 years, if you look back the last sort of 10, 15 years, our weather patterns have been changing massively. We're getting much more rain, especially here in the UK, but yet they haven't been dealing with none of the drainage issues. They're building more and more areas because we're only a small island when you think about it. And they're building more and more housing complexes, which is then stopping all the water going. And they're building it usually on top of floodplains.
Right.
And they're not putting the drainage system in it. We've still got, manholes and drains here that, they're just not adequate for the amount of water that's now going down them. And they're not updating them, So it's just going to get worse.
Yeah, I mean, we've got enough knowledge to know. I mean, if you're building a place in a floodplain, you got to plan on what are you going to do with that water.
We need Elon Musk
It's
out
coming.
with his new boring machine.
Right. Yeah. Underground rivers, right? Or something.
Yeah, absolutely. Just send a big like 60-foot tunnel underneath and just send it all down there.
Yeah. Divert it where maybe it might be needed more or something. Who knows? But again, too, this is just stuff we know we can plan for and all of that.
Yeah, absolutely.
Rick also says here too, they didn't plan in the early days. Yeah, and they're still not planning today as they think about and are doing a lot of stuff.
I think a lot of the world is like this. We're more reactive than proactive, and it's now coming back to bite them. And it's not their properties that are flooding and everything else, is it? So they're not worried about it.
Yep, exactly. Yeah, and then again too, for something if in that sense what we were talking about before, if things are destroyed in that sort of sense, that's capitalism, man. That just means, hey, more money, something's got to be built, people are back to work, that sort of thing. So in the long run, maybe they don't want these preventative measures, because then it, at some point in time down the road, that becomes more money, involved.
It is, but at one point you've got to look at, okay, this infrastructure just isn't supporting us anymore. We've got to make that, those sacrifices now. But hey, that's way above my pay grade.
Yeah, definitely for me too. That's for sure. Right on. Let's see here. I had a question. Meyer Lemons was asking, can you add bokashi to regular compost bin to speed things up in cold weather? How best to combine bokashi with bin composting?
So
is that something you've done there?
Yeah, bokashi's a fermentation, and it's anaerobic. Okay, now when you put that into normal compost, that's fine to add to a normal compost, but that, because it's already fermented, it's not really, it's going to go in as a green, but it's not really going to heat up a compost like an activator would. It's just going to go in there as like part of a green, and that will need balancing out, because it's going to be, obviously you're draining it, but it's going to be quite wet because it's made from kitchen scraps. So what you need to do with that is to mix that in with a lot of carbon, and eventually the anaerobic bacteria will die off and get taken over with aerobic bacteria, but it can't be used in order to heat up. Okay, you would need to add more nitrogen if it's not heating, or get the water or the moisture right, and introduce more air. So like I said, there's three things with composting that's going to dictate the heat. First, you need that volume, and then you're looking at these three things, which is food, moisture, and whether or not then there is enough nitrogen that's in that pile. If you're looking at, you've got all this food that's right, well, you're right there. So you'll know you've got your carbons, your nitrogens, and everything else. Is it moist enough? Give it a squeeze. If only one drop of water comes out, you're ideal. If it clumps into a ball and breaks up, then that's perfect. But if you squeeze it and it doesn't go into a ball, it's not moist enough. Okay, and then the other thing, then, if those two things are right, it has to be air, and all you need to do is turn it, and that will kick off that heating process. But the volume, you need a meter square at least in compost in order to get that heat generated.
Okay,
but just adding bokashi isn't going to help it heat up.
All right. Yeah. Okay. And then T Streets was asking on composting here as well. Can I do hot composting and use the load on the top and collect? So I'm thinking what they're saying is, can I just go to the bottom and collect from the bottom where it's? I'm not sure.
Yeah.
There
Okay.
exactly.
So think about compost. So if this is your compost bin, normally what people do, they dump in the top, and then some of the plastic bins, they have like a door in the bottom you can pull it out of.
Yeah.
The problem you have with this is that, well, actually this phone does it well. That circle is your core, okay? Down here, right around here, this is all the outer side, so it never gets the hottest. It's always in that core there. This is why when I say I turn compost once, is to get that core to the outside and all of this back into that core, so that that goes through the heating cycle. If you're taking it from down here, it's never gone through the heating cycle properly, so therefore you're likely to pull out weed seed and everything else. You need to turn it so that it goes through that heating process. Okay, these bins, I don't like the composting Dalek style bins for that way of composting, where they just say, oh, just keep putting it in the top, because the issue with that is they don't have the volume in order to just do that. And when you make compost, ideally you should collect all of the product and then mix it all in one go and fill the bin entirely. So and then you should be like starting to save all of your stuff again for the next batch, rather than just keep adding, because what happens is you're altering the carbon to nitrogen ratio, and you're affecting it every time you put something else in there, and then you end up then with compost that has varying degrees of decomposition, which slows down the composting process.
Yeah. And again, I think what they're also thinking maybe works, because it sounds like that's pretty similar to what I'm doing when it comes to just my regular cold composting. I have
cold
a
composting
pile that I do, and
Yeah.
then all I do is I take the top off, and then I go right down to the bottom. I sift all of that, and then I mix up the top with all of the bulk, from what I've sifted
you could do
out,
that with cold composting,
and then start
but
it
not
all
hot
over again and
composting.
start piling up again, and then the next year go back and do that. So
yeah, absolutely. You could do that. It takes a lot longer because obviously you're cold composting then. It's also much less air. So the microbial life is limited on a cold compost, why it takes 2 to 3 times longer than normal hot composting does.
Yeah. Well, I'll tell you one of the things though too is that like my cold compost bin, or not, it's not really a bin, it's more like just an area out in the back alley that I have. Worms go crazy up in that sucker, man. That's my biggest thing, is sifting out worms mostly more than other things when it comes down to it.
And what you find is I tend to go for the best of both worlds. So I hot compost first. So I turn it just the once, but within a month of me making it, I've already turned it at week 2 roughly, because that's when it started to just go on the cool down. I've turned it again, and then 2 weeks later, that's on the cool down again. But everything within that pile has gone through that mesophilic stage, so that it heats all the weed seeds, kills all of those off. So I've killed everything in there, all the pathogens and everything. And now, within a month of mixing it, it's now cooling down. So by about week 5 or something, that's cool enough, all the worms move into it. And then I leave that to mature from week 5 right the way through to month 6 when I harvest it. So it's always rammed full of worms, and anybody who's been down to my compost piles will tell you, I'll go in there like there's just worms absolutely everywhere in it. But the reason I do it that way, and I only turn once, obviously turning compost is a lot of work, firstly, but more importantly, I want to turn it so that it kills off all those weed seeds. But then what I don't want to do is keep turning it daily, so that I'm gassing off all of the nitrogen and everything and what have you, and I'm losing the goodness out of that compost in a gaseous form. So and that's the only so we have like a bit of a trade-off here by just turning it the once and doing that, so you kill the pathogens and the weed seeds, but you still get the quality that you would get with a cold compost.
Yeah, definitely. One of the things I do love about doing the cold compost with the worms like that, though, too, is that so I've got my container gardens. Most of mine are containers and all of that, and so I just, similar to like no dig in some sort of sense, I'm just kind of adding new compost each year, kind of to the top of my containers until the point where I actually have to change it all out. But because of sifting through that compost pile like that and getting, I'll get out as many of the larger worms as possible, but they're leaving behind eggs and egg sacs and stuff. So that introduces worms into all of my worm containers and all of that sort of thing. I think, like it might get cold for them during the winter time. So, I think maybe a lot of those worms kind of like maybe get out and escape and get back to the ground.
They'll go down, especially if you've got holes in the container. They'll go down deeper. They'll go down into the subsoil and they'll come back up. And that's what you'll find. Like with a with a hot composting, the center of the compost, even in winter, is still relatively warm. But if we go back to this, what's happening is the worms have come out of here and they've gone down here to where there's a temperature that they really like. But then as this cools, they'll move back up into it. And they'll also go down into the subsoils below. So it's a really good way of composting. But again, there's so many really good methods of composting. And, it's about finding the right method that suits whatever you're doing for the size of garden you have. If you're on a balcony, then bokashi is fantastic for that, because you can ferment those scraps, still put them on the top of your pots. Because they're fermented, they're not going to attract any flies or anything like that, and it's adding all that nutrition back to the pots. So there's really good sorts of composting processes for everybody. There's no reason not to compost.
Yeah, definitely. And kind of like what I was touching on earlier too, is that it's one of those things that really, when you start to learn and understand that, again too, I was talking about worms also as well too, and the worm farming and everything I've been doing this last year. Once you start figuring some of the stuff out, it really helps simplify your understanding of how easy it is to kind of take care of the garden versus all of these other more complicated things. Composting really isn't that hard. It's simple, and like you said, finding the right method that works for you and all of that, and then it's just a huge contribution to your garden.
Yeah, I mean, you can make composting as simple or as hard as you want to. You can really go off right in the weeds with, excuse the pun, but you can go right off in the weeds with composting and be there, and monitoring that pile to the nth degree. Or you can just come here, just get all your greens and browns, mix and layer them, and just turn it and just make sure the moisture's right, and that will produce compost. And I've even got footage of me making compost with just grass clippings and wood chips, nothing else. So it can be as easy or as hard as you want it to be, but the time and the quality of the compost out at the end is what makes the difference.
Yeah. Speaking of that, grass clippings and all that, that is kind of like a major base of what my cold compost is out there. Yeah. It's just what I've got to do to take care of the grass and all of that, and then other garden scraps and things that make it in there as well too. But it's just breaking the stuff down and putting it back to work in your garden. It's already done. It's one
just
thing
organic
in your
matter, isn't it?
Yep. Exactly.
And anything, in life, nature doesn't grab all this stuff and mix it all up and and shred it down and everything. We're just speeding that process up, okay? But invariably it hits the floor and it rots in place, and that's what it does. We just want to speed that up as gardeners to be able to produce soil faster, because we haven't got hundreds of thousands of years to wait like nature has. Nature's going to be here in millions of years time. We aren't.
Yeah, exactly. That is the one thing to learn as gardeners, is how we can best mimic nature, but we gotta understand it does take some time, because nature does its work slowly. And let's see, dealer 978 asks, because we were talking about bokashi as a mulch for container plants, will it work for indoor container plants too?
I wouldn't use it for indoor container plants. All my indoor plants are soilless plants anyway, okay? And they're fed with things like, bear with me, things like this, which is liquid gold leaf, okay? So I'm just trying to guess, so if I just take this plant for argument's sake, you can see in here, there's just a mixture of things like coir chips, there's coir, there's perlite, there's pumice, orchid bark, and all sorts. So they're all those sort of ingredients that are neutral. They don't have anything in them, and then we feed with this. And the reason for that is, if you were to have soil and have a lot of indoor plants like I have here, you're going to end up with things like fungus gnats and what have you. If you was to put bokashi on top of your house plants here, you're going to end up with a massive fungus gnat problem, because it's an ideal place for it to lay eggs. Whereas here, this is the reason you won't see any fungus gnats in this room, because the the soil is a free draining soil. It's totally inert. And then we feed with just this, which is an organic feed. And that way I control what's going on in here. I wouldn't put bokashi on my plants here because of that reason. I wouldn't want to attract the fungus gnats. Now out on like a balcony or something, it's able to air off and you don't get that problem. But in an enclosed environment, you would have that problem.
Yeah, right on. Excellent questions, everybody. Thank you so much. Keep them coming. Drop them in the conversation there. And so how's the garden go this year? I know I talked to you earlier this year, but it's been months now since I saw you last. But
the garden, for some things, went really well. I mean, we have fantastic beans and brassicas and things like that. My potatoes didn't do as well. I think I got about 200 pounds of potatoes, whereas like last year in the same space I had 450 pounds of potatoes.
Oh wow.
So so it was about half, but it was because it was so wet this year. And
that's planting the same amount though too, right?
Exactly the same.
Okay,
and I think what's happened is it was too wet, and I also was trialing mixing a 50-50 my compost with coir mix to hold the moisture in through summer. But of course we didn't have the heat that we had last year, and then we had all our extra water, so they became waterlogged. So I think that had a massive knock-on effect, and I won't be doing that again. But again, you become a good gardener by making these mistakes, Just one thing I'm always doing is trialing new things, especially with the potatoes, because I know I can go back to my true and tested method and get a really good harvest. But I want to try these other things so that I can push that a little bit further, because my goal now is to get 500 pound of potatoes out to the same area. I've set a 450 pound barrier. And the only way you do that is by testing, and then sometimes it doesn't work. But I know now, don't go mixing coir in if you're going to have, a wet summer. And unfortunately, we don't know we're going to have that summer. So
that's the biggest problem, isn't it? With the climate being so wonky and just up and down all the time. It's hard to take things you learned from the last year.
But then it makes me look at my system and go, okay, right. So maybe we do want the soil, but can I put a canopy over the top of where I'm growing these without affecting the light that's going to shed most of that water, so that I control the watering? So it just gets you thinking about other things that you can do that form part of your system, so that you can think, right, okay, because for anybody who's seen my potato growing things, first off, I started growing them in containers because of a pest called wireworm that I had, and that was doing really well, but the foliage was flopping over. So then I built this sort of rudimentary support system that had cow wire across the top on some stakes, and that worked really well. So then I built a framework for that, and that works brilliant now. And now it holds a watering system, a drip irrigation as well, But now this year I found, right, okay, when we have a really wet summer, that's not great either. So we might need to put some sort of shelter over it. But we got to look at, if I put a shelter over it, is that going to then cause too high a humidity that could cause blight? Or is that going to affect the sunlight coming through to them, which could affect the yield? So just adding one thing may cause a problem elsewhere, So, and these are the challenges that I think gardeners do really well to overcome, And it's about making them mistakes. That one of the best gardeners I know will be happy to make a ton of mistakes, because by making those mistakes you're learning and growing as a gardener.
Yeah, that's right, for sure. And again too, like I said, with the climate and things like that, it just becomes just so much more of a challenge to try to figure out exactly what the method that we're going to go into the next year with, because all we've got is the previous year and, and the years prior to that to kind of reference.
And it's changing all the time, isn't it?
It's just every year is so different. Like this year was a lot different than last year.
Yeah, absolutely.
And then I'm sure so far this year is from what we're seeing too, which is a good thing. I mean, I think our rainfall is up so far this year. So again, too,
ours is up too.
Things will have a lot today, even, right?
Absolutely. Yesterday we had more rain than we had in the first 2 months of last year.
Wow.
So, you know, and that was all down in one day. It's been crazy this year. The amount of rainfall we've had, it's been mental.
Yeah, I think your water table is a little full right now, right?
Oh,
Overflowing.
yes. I'm glad I'm on a bit of a hill for the allotment.
Right,
Because
right.
it can drain.
Yeah,
Otherwise I'd be
exactly.
underwater, you know.
Yep. But yeah, then again, too, though, like I said, so that's just going to present new things I've got to be thinking about as I'm looking at this next season, if we're going to have a wetter season than the previous season and that sort of stuff. But, you know, again, it also is, you know, again, too, they may be challenges. They may be things that like, you know, you had an issue, it didn't produce as much as it did the year before and all of that, but I don't know if that took away any of the fun of the growing and the learning and the process of gardening of it all. I mean, it's all still a part of it.
Yeah, exactly. And I still had enough potatoes that will see us through. And we had, like I said, although we fell down a little bit on potatoes, we've done fantastic on all the brassicas and the beans and squash and everything else. So we had abundance of that. It's like my freezer is ram-packed at the moment. I can't get another thing in there. And like the blueberry harvest, for example, this year, we harvested 28 kilos of blueberries off 6 plants. Yeah. You know, so there were other wins as well besides the loss on the potatoes, and that's just the way it is sometimes.
Yeah. Oh, let's see here. Exploring Nature Together says it's time to grow cranberries. That's good stuff.
I got no more room now.
Got no more room, right?
Yeah.
That's so funny. Right on. So yeah, so things were, you know, there's again too, I think that's probably the case for people like us who grow so much stuff that, you know, some years one thing's going to do well and then it's going to be other things that don't do as well. And they just kind of flip around and do different.
Yeah, it balances out, you know, and and you get to learn, and that's why we're all here. Like I said, anybody who thinks that they're going to come into gardening in their first couple of years and then know everything, deluded, because you know nature is going to show you know nothing, even like for someone who's been doing it 40 years like me, you know, it's you know, nature soon tells me, hang on, I think you need a few more years yet.
yes exactly. You know? And then even then it's still not
yeah, exactly.
And that's the thing about gardening.
I'll still be learning till the day I die. And, you know, on the very last year I'm on that garden, before I die, I can guarantee you nature's going to go, nah, you're doing that wrong. You might have been doing it for 80 years, but you're still doing it wrong, you know? And that's just the way it is.
That is just the way it is. But again, then too, like I was saying there just a second ago, is that then becomes a part of the fun of what we get to do in gardening and growing and learning this process, is to, you know, work through those challenges, maybe overcome them one year, maybe fall back the next year, you know, and just kind of going with those ebbs and flows of the gardening season throughout the year. Again, too, even though maybe there isn't, you know, maybe we really wanted that 400 pounds of potatoes, you know what I mean? Maybe we really, really wanted it and all of that. But in the long run, we got the 200. It was still fun. We learned a lot in the process. And then we've got some things to apply to our next gardening season. And maybe, and then that'll be another learning process, part of the process.
I think it's just important, especially for YouTube gardeners as well, is to show the losses as well as the wins. Now, to me, it was a loss over the previous year, a big loss, 50% practically. Okay, that sounds like a massive loss, but to the majority of people, that's a massive win.
Yes, it is. For me, I feel like 200 pounds.
So, you know, you have to really put it into perspective, you know, like it's just like if you were looking at a gardening channel now on YouTube, and someone who just started YouTube yesterday comes and gets 1,000 views on a video, that's a massive win. But of course, I've been around it a long time now, so if I'm not doing like 100,000 views, I'm thinking, like, what have I done wrong now? Like, do you know what I mean? So it's all about perspective and everything else. And you sometimes you just got to be thankful for the harvest you have. You know, if it's not slugs, it's, you know, caterpillar or something else that's sent to try you, and that's just the way. But you've got to show. I mean, on my channel, I've shown the times when I used to have vertigo and stuff, you know, my garden be a right mess, it'd be a write-off completely, you know, and I've shown that because, you know, there are people out there who are struggling, and you've got to say, look, don't worry about it. winter's coming. It's a complete new season next year, and you can start all over again. It doesn't matter in the big scheme of things, you know?
Yeah. I bring up this analogy all the time on the show. Is I'm a huge baseball fan. I've been a lifelong baseball fan. I love it, and I think I like it for almost the same sort of reasons as gardening as well too. Is that if the garden or the team isn't doing as well this year, well, you always got next year. There's always a new season to come. There's always, you know what I mean? There's a whole nother run at it. You know what I mean? And that it's just a year to year. We always get to look forward versus, too much looking back,
Yeah, I still think it's important to look back as well, because you don't learn nothing if you don't, But yeah, I mean, you can't take it too seriously. You just got to look and what went well, what didn't go well, what can I do that's different to get a different result. I mean, the danger is, someone who's failing and doing the same thing year on year and expecting different results, because that ain't gonna happen, But yeah, as long as you're looking at what you're doing and thinking, right, oh, maybe that didn't work so well. What if I try this and give it a go? It doesn't matter. Like, I can tell you a million different ways that potatoes won't grow because I've done them. But I'm finding ways where they do, and I'm still playing around. So, But that's what you've got to do in gardening, and you've got to not let it get you down, and you've just got to go, right, okay, fine. Next year, I'm going to try this instead, and off you go.
That's right. Exactly. Don't be afraid of mistakes, failures, or anything like that. They're just great learning opportunities in the garden. And again, too, I think for me, when it comes down to it, is even those failures are somewhat of an accomplishment, because I get to learn from it and I get to apply some of that stuff, as you're saying there too. That's really what we're looking back at, is those sort of things, so that we can look forward to possibly having better outcomes when it comes down to it.
Yeah, you learn far more by making mistakes than you ever will from, sort of winning all the time,
Yeah. So what was so you mentioned the potatoes and those sort of things. What were some of your other, like, more successful crops this year? Some things that
tomatoes done really well.
Okay.
I had vines that were about 8 feet tall, and I mean, crazy amounts of tomatoes. I don't know if I can show you. You're a bit quick, and I mean crazy amounts. Some of them were just so laden. I've got a freezer full of tomatoes that I couldn't even process because I just couldn't process them in time. So I've got to pull them out and get making sauces on them. And but I give you some sort of idea. That was the last picking just before. Just before I pulled the plants out.
What size? How big are those containers?
They are mushroom trays, so they're about that and about that deep.
Oh yeah.
So big trays, mushroom trays, and the same thing again, like the cucamelons. I was pulling thousands of them things off as well.
Wow.
Those sort of things done really well. And but let's see if I can find, to give you some sort of idea. There's like some of the tomatoes on the plant. You can see how laden that is. And I've been, that was one of the last picks of that. They just...
Which variety was that one?
That was Cherry Bell. They're fantastic. The trusses of fruit on there, there must have been like 30 or 40 tomatoes on a truss. And then the trusses were overlapping each other. It was mental. I had such a good tomato harvest. I was harvesting cucumbers longer than I'd ever harvested them before, because the plants were just constantly flowering. They really loved the rain that was being put down outside, because I think it just kept the temperature cooler in the tunnels, because I think tomatoes and things, they tend to sort of go a little bit more dormant when it gets too hot, and they don't drop so many flowers. But like this year was fantastic in the tunnels. I had tons of figs. In fact, I done a bit of propagating on my fig trees. So it's done really well, apart from the potatoes.
Yeah. So the potatoes were probably like one of the prime problems this last year, and everything else was doing good. Tomatoes for me too, similar story for me. Had just a really great year with tomatoes, which was great because the previous couple of seasons, maybe 2-3 seasons back, I mean, we're talking 3 years maybe back, that I've been having problems each season trying to get through our hot summers with these tomato plants and everything. And my strategies, I think, seemed to work a little bit better this year too, and that was just getting them out earlier. We have a last frost date of mid-May, but about a month leading up to mid-May, we're not getting like hard frosts. And that's one of the things is that it's not too hard to keep a tomato plant alive through minor frosts and minor cold, because they seem to do all right. Maybe a little cover, a little bit of that sort of thing that I do with some of the ones that are really out in the open and all of that. But I found really good success with just getting them out earlier, and then doing something like if there was going to be a forecasted like hard frost or it's going to get really frosty, I'd get out there and cover them up, do whatever I need to do to protect them and that sort of stuff. But that became necessary in my strategy, was to get them out earlier than what we would have normally done, because again too, it's a shift in the climate a bit, and things aren't as cold as what we usually would think about leading up to our last frost date, and the possibilities of how hard the frost could be. So I just kind of went with it this year and went after it. I was like, okay, let's just do it a month early. Let's just start throwing them out there. That gave them that extra chance to grow.
Get away with that. Yeah.
And
I mean, this was the last harvest of blueberries I took. Oh
wow.
And they're seed trays, chock-a-block. That was the last harvest. I've been about 2 weeks before that, I'd done about that same again, and it's just been a really good year, apart from the potatoes. And I know it sounds stupid, but I'd rather the potatoes grow. It's because it's like I really
that's your thing, man.
That's my thing.
That's your thing. You
compost and potatoes.
That's right.
It's funny because it's like I'll get some crops, and they'll do like 10 times better than like the potatoes do or something. But I've got to make the video on potatoes.
That's right. That's right.
It's just the way it is, But
man, those blueberries look good. I was getting some good harvest of blueberries, which is kind of the opposite of my tomatoes the previous couple of seasons. But I moved them a season ago to a new area, which I thought would work better for them, but it would completely didn't. And I didn't, and so I've moved them back to another area. I think that'll work best because they're all in big containers. I have big containers. Okay. So
that's different then, isn't it?
I didn't say what that first, but they're in big, large containers. So.
Otherwise, if you're moving them out to the ground, because all of my blueberries are in the ground, and if you move them out, when they're in the ground, that can set them back for a year or two, But like the only thing I have to do is just adjust the pH of that area, the ground for the blueberries every couple of years, but then you get fantastic harvests like that, It's been brilliant. And I had my first kiwi as well this year, which was nice. I put a kiwi vine outside in the fruit cage, and it's grown that mental that it's gone through the fruit cage.
Oh wow!
But it provided me my first fruit this year, which was nice. So hopefully next year it'll be a bumper crop on there as well.
Oh man, yeah, I love kiwis. I should actually think about that myself for sure. Let's see here. Myra Lemons was asking likely reasons. What are some likely reasons why 4 of my potato plants only gave me 1 or 2 large ones, but lots of small ones? Any ideas on that?
The likelihood is there. The large one was produced really early on in the growth cycle, and maybe the plant got checked for a while, so it just looked after that one potato, and then eventually it came out of being checked, and then it started pushing out other potatoes. But the issue you have when that happens is all the new potatoes that are coming out are all going to be small, because the plant is automatically going to keep sending its feed to the bigger potato. So it's a little bit like the easiest way to explain it is if you think about a tree, the sugars are sent to the point, to the tip, and that's where the growing hormones are. And it's probably the same thing with that potato, because that was their first. All the growth hormones are going that way rather than to other potatoes as well. Unfortunately, there's not a lot you can do about it, which is why I say to people, it's really important, especially around flowering time, that you don't allow the potatoes to dry out, because those little fine hairs that are producing the feed for the tubers for them to bulk out, if they dry off and they fall off the plant, then you set that plant back and then you're going to cause problems with your harvest. But if one potato does stay, that becomes a dominant potato, and everything else that comes after it will suffer.
Oh wow. Okay. Yeah. All right. And then Serena's asking a couple of different questions here. She asks, Tony, I removed the chits and placed the potatoes in a box in the garage in Vortex in February. Will that hurt the potatoes? And how do I prevent pests?
So firstly, it would depend. You need to keep your garage frost-free. Cold is fine. You don't want the potatoes freezing though, so maybe just wrap that box in a bit of insulation or something, but not the top of it. You want to allow the potatoes to breathe, okay? So don't seal them in, otherwise what's going to happen is it'll cause condensation within there, and then that'll cause mold to grow and what have you, okay? Let me just see what else is going on here. Polar Vortex and the chits. Yeah, I mean, other than that...
So you can take... So they start shitting, or they start producing and shitting and all of that, but you can take those off and they'll regrow?
Yeah, they'll regrow. The issue you got is if they've already started to produce chits and they've woken up from being dormant already, the likelihood if you put them back into dormancy, okay, is quite rare. I missed that part of the question, sorry. So if they were dormant and you've woken them up and that's why you've had to snap the chits off, what I would suggest you do is actually get some egg crates and place them on the egg crates and put them somewhere bright in an area that is frost-free, okay, but not too warm. And what will happen is they'll produce new shoots, but they'll grow very, very small and they'll be very stumpy, and they'll stay like that. They may shrivel a little bit. That's not a problem for the tuber, and they'll stay like that until you need to plant them now in February and March or whatever the case is. But if they had chits before they went dormant, then breaking them off, you can make them go dormant, that's fine. But once they've been dormant and woken up, you won't get them back into dormancy.
Yeah. Can you, so they're just coming out, but what about those ones that get really long? Can you just
snap
those
them
off
and just let them reach it? Yeah.
Best to do that.
Yeah, I mean that is because they've been searching for light, and what typically happens there is like someone's left potatoes in the bottom of a cupboard where it's dark, and it's warm typically, so they've chitted in there, and then they've gone spindly and white looking for light. What you want is to get them into the light, into a cool area. So either in a room that don't have heating on or something like that, or, in a slightly heated greenhouse or something that's just above freezing, 5-6 degrees would be ideal. You just want to keep that frost off them, and they will produce really short, stubby chits, and they'll stay like that indefinitely until you're ready to plant them or until it warms right up. And the potato itself may start to shrivel, but that isn't a problem. People worry about shriveled potatoes, but it's just a food source. As long as that chit is alive, you're fine.
Okay. Let's see here. And you were saying that was about 5 degrees. That's Celsius, right?
Yeah.
I gotta make sure. Gotta make sure we're covering our Americans.
Yeah,
over here.
Don't do 5 Fahrenheit.
So that's about 40 degrees. About 40
around there,
Fahrenheit.
I think.
Yeah, right on. Just wanted to make sure we got that. You're really good about that though, because you've been telling us about potatoes in pounds, so that's great. I mean, I gotta love it. You throw Celsius out at us, and we're like,
it's funny sometimes because, like, I'm still old school.
Yeah.
Right. So I'm still in feet and inches and everything else, and everybody's here in millimeters and meters. I can do both. I just prefer feet and inches because that's what I've worked in all my life. And same thing with pounds. I don't like kilograms, So I do that. But of course, Celsius is what we measure temperature here, and I can't change that, really.
Yeah.
But also, 95% of my audience is from America. So I tend to use that language as well, and I get slaughtered for it sometimes especially if I call autumn fall. God,
Right.
sometimes you look at my comment section and I get such a slaughtering. I've had people unsubscribe from me because I've called it fall instead of autumn.
Oh my gosh.
And the thing is, you have to build your videos and the vocabulary to the audience. And, it's the fact that 95% of my audience is US based. So that's what I do.
Yeah, we kind of talked about that a little bit earlier in the year when you were on for our book club and talking about your book. You've got to make a couple of different versions of that book, for
I did the second
European
one,
audience and one for a more American audience.
And that was because on launch day, or just before launch, I'd sent out some books for people to pre-read. And I had a bit of grief because all the measurements were for the US. It was in pounds and, and things like this. And I had a lot of grief about, right, that's it. I'm doing a second book just for the UK.
Right.
And I literally had to go and pay to have another book done, different versions. I had to spend weeks rewriting all of the charts and everything else, and then I had to put out 2 books, which defeats the object really, because you're splitting the audience on the book sales because it's to ISBN numbers and stuff. So
so it's literally 2 different books, then
literally 2 different books, and because of that, it splits the audience. So none of the books ever they do well, but you wouldn't likely get a bestseller from it because you've split the audience down 2 different books rather than everybody coming on to one book.
Yeah.
And to date, it is my worst selling book because of that.
Really? You think because it's probably something you won't do again then? Maybe
I didn't on the third one.
Oh, right. Yeah. Maybe just a conversion chart for everybody, right?
That's what I done. It all went into one book and I just done a conversion thing. But it was too late with the second book. It was already written. It'd already been proofread and altered and everything else. It was already off to print. So it was too late for that. So we ended up just doing another version like.
Yeah.
And the only difference is they look exactly the same. It's just the UK one's got a big star on it with UK edition on it, and that's the only difference, as far as the covers go.
Yeah, right on. And
Chris in the Exploring Nature Together, she's saying now in the chat she remembers it because I was on the computer to her every night. I was pulling my hair out, and she was like, calm down." She was a lifesaver back then, Chris was. She's always awesome. A lifesaver.
Oh, yeah. Awesome. Thank you. That's so awesome. Right on. Yeah. And again, too, real quick, what's your website?
SimplifyGardening.com.
Just SimplifyGardening.com. Yeah. For anybody who hasn't had a chance to check out any of those books or anything, go check out SimplifyGardening.com. I'm sure we'll get Jay to put a link in there too, so you guys can go.
Yeah, I mean, you can get them anywhere in all good bookshops and Amazon and on the website. I've got 23 books out now, and 3 of them are like hardback paperbacks, and the rest of them are ebooks that anybody can buy anywhere off the website or whatever. So.
All right. Yeah. Okay. Well, let's continue with some more potato questions because you are the potato guy. Mario Lemons was Tony. So would you say very even watering really vital for potatoes? What if they get nibbling damage from deer? Will that put them in check like uneven water?
So potatoes, as long as they're keeping some of their foliage, they're going to be photosynthesizing, they're going to get the feed they need, okay? The issue a lot of people have with potatoes is they put too much nitrogen. And what they do is they pile all the feed into the container or into the ground at planting time, and they don't change that feed as the potato grows on. They have 2 phases within their life cycle. And the first phase is a vegetative phase where they're putting out all the vegetation on the top, and they need nitrogen for that. And then the next phase then is they're pushing out the root system and turning those tubers and putting the bulk on those. And for that, they need phosphorus and potassium. So there's a switch at flowering time in the feed. So initially you might put a blood, fish and bone meal or something like that in the container or in the ground as a balanced fertilizer. And then you may want to give a little bit of nitrogen, so maybe a chicken pellet feed to boost the nitrogen levels at that time while it's growing through its first cycle. But as soon as you see the buds forming for the flowers, you want to be switching to a potassium and phosphorus feed, something like liquid seaweed or tomato fertilizer, something like that. And then you want to remove all the buds. Don't let it flower at all. Just every time you see them buds appearing, just keep removing them. Because if you remove the buds, all of that energy, instead of going into flower production and seed formation, is going to go into tuber formation. And that way you're going to have a much better crop. But the time from flowering on is when that root system is pushing out, and you really need to keep that water consistent. It needs to be moist but not overly wet. So if you put your finger in and it feels wet, then it's too wet. But if you put your finger in and just some compost is sticking or some soil is sticking to your finger, that's about right. But you don't want to be able to grab a handful of it and have water dripping out of it. You just need it moist enough that it's going to keep that root system thriving and be able to take up the nutrition that you've already put in that container.
And not drying out either, you know. That's...
No, if you find that you've dried out the container or whatever the case being, there's a very good chance that the fine feeding roots have rotted off already, in which case, as an interim measure, you could foliar feed. But then if you do that early in the morning to give it a chance to dry out throughout the day, and otherwise you could cause a blight issue, okay? But a foliar feed then with something like a tomato plant, half diluted or whatever, would work in the interim while it builds up the root system again, to stop it checking so much.
Yeah. Again, even watering is a huge thing for like most all of your garden for sure. It's one of the biggest lessons I've learned over the last few years and still am working on, is making sure I've got a good watering system, timers, drip, you know, all that sort of stuff to make sure things are kind of as consistent as I can make it.
The way I think about it is like us, we can go a couple of weeks without food. Yeah, but we wouldn't go a couple of days without water. So to me, water is more important than feeding. And so once you get that right, I think, you'll see massive improvements in your yields.
All right. Let's see here too. There's that's right. Dusty put this up here too to make it into a question. So if potatoes get cool, they get into the cool season, you're growing there, do they get sweeter as it gets colder? Do you think? Is that something you've observed?
I don't know. I can't. I think a lot of it's down to the variety.
You say a lot of the sugars start getting...
the sugars will turn and start working out. But I can't say I've ever noticed that. But then I'm harvesting my potatoes before the cold really sets in anyway.
Right.
So, typically September time, my potatoes are pretty much 50% of the foliage is yellow, at which point I cut all the haulms down and I leave them in the buckets then for a further 2 weeks before I harvest, for the skins to harden off so that I can store them. So, but I can't say I've ever noticed that, Pam, to be honest with you.
Okay. And then Pam also asks, because you grow rose potatoes, but do you grow sweet potatoes too?
I grow sweet potatoes. I've got a video on my channel about producing the sweet potato slips, but we have to grow them in a polytunnel or a greenhouse here. It's not warm enough outside. For us to get anything of a substantial size, it'd have to be in the greenhouse. So some years I will grow them. It depends really. Like this year I went all out on melons and stuff. So I didn't bother grow the sweet potatoes because I wanted to dedicate the space for melons. But they'll grow fine. They just need to be indoors for a really good harvest.
Yeah. Right on. Yeah. And I was going to say too, is that I love sweet potatoes. They become one of my more favorite things and they grow really well for me and everything. I did this last year though. Pumpkin pie is a big thing, when it comes to the holidays and all of that sort of stuff. But I introduced and kind of switched the pie up to a sweet potato pie, and had my daughter try that. And man, she's like, "Oh, this is great!" Oh, and she's going on like, "This is the best pumpkin pie I've ever had." I'm like, but let me let you know, this is sweet potato, and all of a sudden her jaw drops. She's like, "What? I'm eating sweet potatoes. What is this?"
Yeah, I mean, I like sweet potato as like a jacket potato, a roast potato type thing.
Yeah.
They are really nice for that. But again, it's down to personal preferences, isn't it? The other potatoes are great for us because they're so versatile. And not everybody likes sweet potatoes in my family, although I like them a lot. Not everybody does. So whereas with the other potatoes, everybody likes them. So that's what I grow. But I'll still grow sweet potatoes. I just won't grow so many of them.
Right, exactly. All right, so your last question from me today, because you just mentioned it. In fact, I was actually, again, bringing up my daughter again, too. We were talking a few weeks back because one of her favorite things and my favorite things are just baked potatoes, when it comes to, a side for whatever dish or whatever. So we're always like, well, we'll just do baked potatoes. But jacket potatoes. Was it a different type of baked potato? They're very popular in England, and I was telling her about how they got like food trucks just for potatoes over there.
Yeah. When I was saying baked potato, I meant jacket.
Exactly. So tell us what makes the best jacket potato in your opinion.
So variety first. You want a potato that will do well. Something like a King Edward or Maris Piper or something will get quite big. They're pretty good for jackets. But then you want to control the size of the potato growth. So you want large potatoes and you don't want lots of small ones. So what you have to do for that, the number of chits that the potato produces will depend on the amount of potatoes produced, okay? So if you rub off all of the chits, and when I say rub off, I don't just mean break them off. You have to dig them out with a coin or something like that. So you end up with like a wound, so that we already said if you break off a chit, it can grow back, right? We don't want them growing back. So dig them out with a coin and just leave 2 chits on a whole tuber, plant that tuber. What that does, it only pushes up 2 homes. You'll get fewer potatoes, but they will be much larger when you grow them. Okay, and also limit the amount of space. So if I want to grow lots of relatively good sized potatoes, I'll put like 2 potatoes in a container. But if I want larger potatoes, I might only put 1 potato in there, because what that does, it means all of the feed is available to that one plant with just 2 shoots. So it has to put that feed into the tuber growth, and you've limited how many tubers can form by limiting the chits. So the potatoes have to grow bigger. So if you're planting in the ground, just plant further away.
Yeah. Let's see. Oh, you know what? I know she had a couple of different questions in that last one. She was talking about the chits and storing them in the garage. There was that last question there too. What about pest control in the garage? I'm not sure, like pests or potato storage.
Oh, excuse me. Give me 1 second so I can put all my lights on.
The powers went out. We're still online, but the power is out.
Can everybody still see me?
I can see you. Yeah,
it just went a little bit dark.
Looks like you got your computer lighting you up though too. But yeah, it did go dark. There you go.
There we go. How was that? That'll do. Right.
There you go. I was like, oh no, it's finally hit. We're about
9 o'clock, all the lights go off in here automatically, because obviously this is a pantry room. I'm not always down here because this is in my garage, So
right.
Right. Okay. So pests, we don't tend to have those issues here in the colder areas. But if you're talking, I'm assuming you're talking things like maybe rats and things. I don't know.
Yeah, that's what I'm thinking.
Yeah. I mean, to be honest with you, the only thing you could do for that is really lift them up and get some traps down or something. But I don't
The
have
biggest
that. You
worry
might
would be more like fungal and rotting and things like
fungal,
that, right?
yeah, that's what I was talking about earlier on. Keep that box open, check them regularly, you know, and you could even wrap them in paper if you were that worried, but wrapping like 400-pound spuds would be a bit much. What I'll tend to do is put them in sacks, but I will check the sacks on a regular basis. For rats and things though, like they'll end up in the cold area of my garage, or up in one of the sheds at the allotment, and they can't go in there. And if you're that worried about them, put them in like a plastic box with a wire mesh lid, and then they definitely can't get in there.
Yeah. All right, let's see here. Let's see, Flats was at, or not really a question. We'll make it a question. Says that the red larger seed pieces equals more potatoes per hill.
That's because of the amount of eyes that are on the seed. This is why I'm saying you must dig them out with a coin if you want big potatoes. But there is a method that I'm going to be testing this year called fusing. And I'm only doing it because I'm trying for a world record. And basically what you're doing is you want to grow as many potatoes from the same plant as possible, but constrict the space to force those potatoes to fuse together. And eventually, when they push together on a consistent basis as they're growing, they actually fuse together and become one potato. So
wow.
That's the theory I'm working on anyway. So that's something else I'm trying now for a world record attempt this year. So I've been doing a bit of work around that, and but essentially, you just, the more eyes you have, the more homes that come up, the more potatoes you're going to get, but the smaller the potato.
Right. Excellent. Yeah. All right. I want to finish this up here with you. I want to keep you all day here. You got a storm watch going on. It's getting late and everything. We've been so great, but let's finish up here too, because they were talking a little bit about hilling, and this is something I like to talk about a little bit too. How necessary is hilling when it comes to growing potatoes, and why would you do it? At all?
So, firstly, it depends on the variety. Okay. The only potatoes that you need to hill are your main crop or your indeterminate potatoes. Your determinates or your first and second earlies you don't need to hill because they only grow on a single layer. It's the main crop and the indeterminate that grow on multiple layers, and the reason for hilling is to be able to cover the haulms as they grow, because that's where potatoes are going to actually push through the soil surface, and the hilling will stop the sun from turning those potatoes green. That's the only real reason, and you get a bigger crop because they're growing through that soil layer that you're hilling up. Okay. If you're growing in containers, however, you don't need to hill. You can just fill the container from the beginning and just allow those potatoes to grow up through it.
Yeah. What about, like, I mean, you get some, like, I've got some large ones, man, and even if I don't, they still try to push up over the soil. Would it just still be a good idea to maybe just put a little inch or two just to protect any that might come up above the soil?
You could use a mulch, couldn't you? You could put a straw mulch over it. That will stop the light. All you're looking to do, all hilling's going to do at that point is stop the light. Okay. If you keep adding soil, what's going to happen, especially on an indeterminate variety, is the plant is going to think, oh, hang on, I can push out more roots here, and it's going to then try and produce smaller potatoes there. So what it's doing then is it's producing potatoes up here at the cost of bulking out the potatoes down here. So you do want to limit that a little bit. So if you keep adding soil, you can keep adding soil. You could be 5 feet deep, but and the plant will keep pushing that home through. But the problem is that's a cost to you. Okay, that energy is being wasted there instead of producing the tuber. So you've got to look at, right, okay, this is ideal here. You know, usually you dig like maybe a spit deep if you're in a ground or wherever. You put your potatoes in. As they come up, you'll hill them. So they're like 2 spits deep. So that's the depth of a spade, yeah? And you'll get good potatoes. But it's just an old-fashioned... it's the main way it used to be done when potatoes were only grown in the ground. Because growing potatoes in containers wouldn't have been heard of, 30, 40 years ago,
Right.
But as we progress things, we look at ways again. For me, it was, all right, where I was growing before, I had wireworm, which was a pest, bored holes right through potatoes, ruined all the crop. So I had to find a solution. The containers came to be the solution. And so we adapted for that. But they didn't have those options back then. They didn't know how and everything else. It just evolves, doesn't it? You find better ways of doing things. Not always, but sometimes.
Yeah. Right on.
You wouldn't do what I do commercially.
Yeah.
It would just be too much of an expense,
right,
and too much hard work. You couldn't get a machine in it to harvest it,
Right on. All right. Well, I'll leave everybody with this. Serena put this up. I thought it was funny. You can't grow potatoes and onions together because the onions will get in the potatoes' eyes and make them cry. Talk about companion planting, right? Thank you, Serena. And again, thank you, Tony, for coming here and being here with us.
It's been a pleasure.
It's so awesome to have you here on the show. We're going to have you back definitely for sure, as we're looking forward to our 2025 season for sure. And again, really just thank you for so much of your support and just being around. I see you in our comment section all the time, watching our show and doing all that sort of stuff. And that just means a lot to me and everybody else here on the show as well, too. So thank you again for everything you do here to support our channel and all of the other channels in the gardening and growing community.
Oh, it's great to be here.
Excellent. Thank you again, Tony. We'll see you again soon.
Bye-bye.
All right, everybody. Again, too, I told you right at the very beginning of the show, we were going to have an awesome show today. And again, the show is so awesome and we're having such great conversations when we're running late on getting out of here, actually. I could talk to Tony all day. I could have talked to Michael all day. I love this. I love this stuff. I love this show. This has been, again, just so much fun. And again, all of you who are showing up today too. Amazing conversation in our chat today. Thank you all of you who are participating with us in our show here today as well too. So, again, thank you, Tony, for being with us today. Thank you, Michael from the Garden Nerd. Really, really awesome to have you here with us. And again, remember everybody, we are here every Saturday and Sunday at 11 a.m. Pacific Standard Time, 2 p.m. Eastern. And next week on the show, we talked about this a little bit earlier in the show too. Next week we will have be doing a year in review type of show. We're going to do kind of a little special edition show. We're going to look back on our 2024 here on the Let's Get Growing show. Again, we've had such a great year. So I'm just going to kind of tease that. We're going to talk a lot about how awesome it's been this year, talk a lot about all the different guests we've got to talk to. Plus, we're going to have join with us live our sponsor, Charles Malky will be with us here live. We'll talk a little bit there with him, as well as Sarah from Sarah's Seed Shop will join with us live and do some live garden trivia with us. Got a couple of other ideas I'm working on as well too. So we're going to have a really great time here this next Saturday on the show. So you'll definitely want to make sure that you're looking to join with us this next Saturday on the show. And then also too, again, we like I said, we're here every Saturday and Sunday. We've got the Sunday edition of the Let's Get Growing show tomorrow, 11 a.m. Pacific time, 2 p.m. Eastern on the Sunday edition. It is already the second Sunday of the month. And on the second Sunday of the month, we are having a great gardening discussion where if you didn't get any questions answered today, or if you thought of some that you might have about other things growing on in your garden, definitely be sure to join with us tomorrow. We'll have Master Gardener, Gardner Scott, joining with us to answer all of your garden questions, man. I'm looking forward to that. That's something we've had such fun with this year, is getting to have him on the show with us every second Sunday of the month. He has missed the last month or so because of different scheduling conflicts and travel that he's had to do, but we've got him back. We've got him scheduled for this month and months to come as well too. So again, join with us again tomorrow for our Sunday edition of the show. And then, like I said, too, next Sunday for the Sunday edition of the show is our third Sunday of the month already. Again, too, it just seems like it was just yesterday we were doing our gardening book club. We actually did our year in review on the book club this last month. And this month, we're finishing up the year with Diane Meisler's Grow Your Soil. She's got a cool little book here talking all about the soil food web and how to create your best garden ever. Just a really fun book all about soil. I've been really digging into that, really enjoying it over the last week or two. And I can't wait to talk about it with all of you and my good friend Mark Boucher Colbert, who joins with me to co-host our book club. And then Diane Meisler, of course. You know, that's one of the things that makes the book club so awesome and so unique as far as book clubs are concerned. We get to talk and have a discussion with the authors about their books and how those books came together and all of that sort of stuff. In fact, if you all remember, we just got done talking with Tony, and I mentioned it just there a little bit during our conversation with him. Tony was featured in our Gardening Monthly book club early on in our some of our first couple of book clubs we did. In fact, I think it might have been just the second one. In fact, I think we were trying to get him to be the first one, but we ended up having a scheduling thing there too. But yeah, again, too, we'll have a really great discussion again this next week with Diane Meisler for her book, Grow Your Soil. Lots and lots of great things growing on here, like I said. So you'll definitely want to make sure that if you haven't already, you want to make sure you click that subscribe button, hit the bell notification so you can be notified of all of these great live streams and videos. I'm going to get back on track with videos coming up here real soon. So definitely subscribe, hit that notification so you can see some of these videos as they start popping up here in the next few weeks. And then also definitely click that like button, hit the thumbs up, and share with all of your garden friends out there and let them know about these great, fun gardening conversations we're having with some of the great best gardeners across the world. We have some of the best guests you can find in the gardening community right here on the Let's Get Growing show. So definitely be sure to join with us, subscribe, and share. Also, like I said, too, definitely be sure to check out the links down in the description below, because I've got links to Tony's channel, Simplify Gardening. If you haven't subscribed to him, which I can't imagine you haven't already, but if you haven't, definitely go over and subscribe to Tony's channel. Michael's channel, The Garden Nerd, as well, is right down there in the description, and go subscribe to his channel. And like I said too earlier in the show, one of the things I love to see is when you guys are here helping support the gardening community and help us support those great guests and gardeners that we have here on the show. Go over to their channel, go over to one of their recent videos or social media and posts or something like that, and just leave a comment in there. Let them know you saw them here on the Let's Get Growing show, and help spread the love around the gardening community for sure. And also down below in the description, I also have links to, I'm going to be this Wednesday, December 11th, I'm going to be a guest on the Garden Party podcast. That's on the Texas Garden Guys channel. I did put a link down below to the Texas Garden Guys live stream. He hasn't posted yet the actual link for that podcast or live stream that we'll be doing on Wednesday. I'm sure it's coming up here anytime now, but you can go to that link down below. It should show up there. And when you see that, go ahead and hit that notify there. If it's before Wednesday, or if not, come and join with us Wednesday at 5 p.m. Pacific, 8 p.m. Eastern, I think 7 p.m. Central, where they are in Texas as well, too. So that's December 11th for the Garden Party podcast with the Texas Garden Guy and Phil from Phil's Figs, and maybe we'll see Des from Gardening with Des. So it'll be a fun conversation for sure. It always is when I get a chance to go over there and talk with them, or even having them here on our show. We've got to talk with all of them as well right here on Let's Get Growing. Plus, I want to mention too, our good friend, one of my favorite gardeners, one of my favorite people, Wendi Phan. She's been doing live streaming now. She's had her channel for years and never really touched live streaming, but she's into it now. She's been doing quite a few different live streams and everything. In fact, she's going to be doing a live stream here in about 45 minutes. It's starting at 2 p.m. Pacific time on her channel, Wendi Land, and I've got a link down below in the description below too for that as well too. If you're just having a fun day today, maybe some of you have already been on Nate's channel already. He does a live stream right before us, leading up to our show, and then we just had our show, and then you can keep on the garden conversation over at Wendy's channel as well too, here in just a few minutes as well. So check out that link down below. Go check out Wendy's live stream. Come check me out this Wednesday on the Garden Party podcast. Come and be sure to be here tomorrow for Gardener Scott. And then, of course, come and check us out for next weekend's Year in Review show and our gardening book club. Again, so many great things growing on here on the Let's Get Growing show. And it's so awesome to see all of you. Such a wonderful conversation. I just love it. Just been great. Again, we'll see all of you tomorrow.